Yes.
अज्ञानातिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातां सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगना ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नमां विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामीति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिसिद्धान्त सरस्वती इति नामिने श्रीवास भानवी देवी दयिताय कृपाब्दे कृष्णसम्बन्ध विज्ञान दायिने प्रभवे नमः। माधुर्य उज्ज्वल प्रेमाढ्य श्रीरूपाणुभक्तिन श्रीगौर करुणाशक्ति विग्रहाय नमोस्तुते। नमस्ते गौरवाणी श्रीमूर्तये दीनतारिणे रूपाणुग विरुद्धाप सिद्धान्तध्वान्तहारिणे नमो गौरकिशोराय साक्षात् वैराग्यमूर्तये विप्रलम्ब रसाम्बोधे पादाम्बुजाय ते नमः। नमो भक्ति विनोदाय सच्चिदानन्दनामिने गौरशक्ती स्वरूपाय रूपाणुगवरायते गौरविर्भावभूमिस्त्वं निर्देष्टा सज्जनप्रिय वैष्णव सार्वभौम श्रीजगन्नाथाय ते नमः। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरद्विषे नमः। पञ्चतत्त्वात्मकं कृष्णं भक्तरूपस्वरूपकं भक्तावतारं भक्ताख्यं नमामि भक्तशक्तिकं। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धौ दीनबन्धौ जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोस्तुते। जयतां सुरतोर्पङ्गो मम मंद मतेर्गति मत्सर्वस्व पदाम्भोजो राधा मदनमोहनं दिव्यद्वृन्दारण्यकल्पद्रुमादः श्रीमद्रत्नागार सिंहासनस्थो श्रीमद् राधा श्रीलगोविन्ददेवो प्रेष्टालिभिः सेव्यमाणो स्मरामि। श्रीमान् रासरसारम्भी वंशीवटतटस्थितः कर्षणवेणु स्मणैर्गोपीर्गोपीनाथ श्रेयस्तु नः। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। अर्जुनेर रथे कृष्ण हय रजूधर वसियाचे हाते तोत्र श्यामल सुंदर। अर्जुनेर कहितेचे हित उपदेश तारे देखी हय मोर आनंद आवेश। यावत पडो तावत पड तारदर्शन येई लागी गीता पाठ नाछाडे मोर मन। सार्थम अर्जुनस्यादौ कुर्वन् गीतामृतं ददौ लोकत्रयोपकाराय तस्मै कृष्णात्मने नमः। We'll recite the verses. Now, whatever number of verses are there in our current unit. पुरुषः प्रकृतिस्थो हि भुङ्क्ते प्रकृतिजान् गुणान् कारणं गुणसङ्गस्य सद् असद्योनिजन्मसु उपदृष्टा अनुमन्ता च भर्ता भोक्ता महेश्वरः परमात्मेति चाप्युक्तो देहेऽस्मिन् पुरुषः परः मां च यो व्यभिचारेण भक्तियोगेन सेवते सगुणान् समतीयेतान् ब्रह्मभूयाय कल्पते सर्वस्य च अहं हृदि सन्निविष्टो मत्तः स्मृतिर्ज्ञानमपोहनं च वेदैश्च सर्वे अहमेव वेद्यो वेदाङ्कृत् वेदविद एव चाहं सर्व डबल हो गए ब्रह्मभूत प्रसन्नात्मा न शोचति न काङ्क्षति समः सर्वेषु भूतेषु मद्भक्ति लभते पराम् भक्त्या माम् अभिजानाति यावन्यश्चास्मि तत्त्वतः ततो मां तत्त्वतो ज्ञात्वा विशते तदनन्तरम् मन मन्मना भव मद्भक्तो मद्याजी मां नमस्कुरु माम् एवैष्यसि सत्यं ते प्रतिज्ञाने प्रियोऽस्मि मे सर्वधर्मान् परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज अहं त्वां सर्वपापेभ्यो मोक्षयिष्यामि मा शुच So, yesterday we have started the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and in that we just um, recited the verse, and after that we understood the translation, and then we just started reading the purport, and I think we have completed first paragraph. So this much we have covered yesterday. So anything which struck you in our yesterday's discussion? We couldn't have full, we just had 1 hour, but whatever some points which you like, you remember, which you understood, anything?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu, you can tell.
Prabhuji spoke about the Kshetragya Kshetra and that soul, body, and spoke yesterday about.
Yes, yes, yes. So
Three things
yes.
were discussed. Yeah.
Yes. Kshetra and Kshetrajna, both of them are separate. Yes. Thank you, Prabhu. Somebody else?
Thank you. Thank you.
So we'll move ahead. So we saw that in first verse, Arjuna has asked 6 questions, and Krishna started giving answer from the third question. And third and fourth question, Krishna has given answer. And so after that, we read the first paragraph. So we'll begin from the second paragraph. As we have decided, while reading only, just I will read 1 2 verses, and whatever is there, we understand how Prabhupada has written these lines. Then, in the first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, the knower of the body, the living entity, चेन्नई नहीं आ रही.
जबकि वो
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, I was ready before 5:30 today, but somehow electronics it stopped working now in the class. So we'll continue. In the now Prabhupada is writing in the first six chapters of Bhagavad Gita, the knower of the body, the living entity, and the position by which he can understand the Supreme Lord are described. We have yesterday why I asked you the question what you understood from the first or summarize the first six chapters. That was my question. So what Prabhupada is telling, the knower of the body and a living entity and the position by which he can understand the Supreme Lord. So how he can understand the Supreme Lord? By karma. How karma leads to bhakti and he can understand. Now, in the middle six chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the relationship between the individual soul and the super soul in regards to devotional service are described. What is there in the middle sixth chapter is that the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the individual soul, the relationship between both of them, it is mentioned, and how the soul establishes relationship by devotional service. he establishes relationship with the Lord. The superior position of the personality of Godhead and the subordinate position of the individual soul are definitely defined in these chapters, in middle six chapters. The living entities are subordinate under all circumstances, but in their forgetfulness, they are suffering. So, when suffering comes, Prabhupada has mentioned here, when we are forgetful that we are subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, at that time suffering comes. When enlightened by pious activities, they approach the Supreme Lord in different capacities. When they understand that they are subordinate, then how they approach the Lord, at this you have learned in 7th chapter, that artho jigyasu arthartir jnani, disgraced, those who in want of money, the inquisitive, and those who in search of knowledge. They establish a relationship with the Lord. That is also described. Now, starting with the 13 chapters. Now, this is Prabhupada has mentioned the 12th chapter, and now he is starting this 13th chapter. Now, what is there in 13th chapter? How the living entity comes in contact with the material nature. How he is described, sorry, how he is delivered by the Supreme Lord through the different methods of fruitive activities, cultivation of knowledge, and the discharge of devotional service are explained. So yesterday I mentioned the point. So for delivering the jiva, Krishna has given this jnana, and um, where he has mentioned that he will deliver the jiva, 12.7. Teshaham samudhartha mrityu samsara sagara. And how he is delivering? By giving this jnana, cultivation of knowledge, and there are three methods. The fruitive activities, cultivation of karma, jnana, and bhakti. So, like this, it is mentioned. Although the living entity is completely different from the material body, it somehow becomes related. This is also is explained. Although we saw that Kshetrajna is different from the Kshetra, previous paragraph Prabhupada has mentioned. But somehow, because of some bad fortune, he comes with in contact with the Prakriti, and he forgets that he is subordinate to the Lord. So these are some points Prabhupada has given. Acharya, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he is telling that, let me offer my respects to the Lord's Bhakti, which by its mercy resides within jnana and other processes to a small degree in order to bring about success in those processes. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur tells that without bhakti, we cannot achieve the results of jnana and karma. And he mentioned this point in purport to the first verse. And he mentioned after that he mentioned that uh, this is now the third six chapters. What is mentioned in the third six chapters is that uh, process of jnana. Jnana is explained there in detail. And what is especially in jnana, the field is mentioned, and the knower of the field is mentioned, and the process of knowledge and the object of knowledge. These things Krishna will explain as Arjuna has asked him his question. Then So now this conditioned soul and liberated soul, Prabhupada has mentioned in his first paragraph. Yesterday we read it. Regarding that, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is telling that conditioned jivas, what they do is eat one fruit of the tree called distress. We saw that conditioned jiva, what they do, or conditioned souls, what they do.
Can I say, Prabhuji?
Yes.
They want to enjoy the fruits of their karmas.
Yeah. And with what they identify, conditioned souls.
They identify themselves with the enjoyer, controller, and proprietor. They are the body.
Yeah. Especially they identify with the body. Thank you, bro. So now
Thank you,
what
Prabhuji.
he is telling that. So what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is telling that they want to enjoy and they want to go to Swarga, conditioned soul, and enjoy there. And for liberated souls, he has used the word swan. They are hamsas and they live in the forest, and they are the liberated jivas, and they eat another fruit called happiness. So he's just telling that if we are conditioned, then we will be in distress. And we identify with the body, then we will suffer from the distress. And if we are identifying something different from the body, and we know the kshetra, and then we'll get happiness. Same thing, but he has used the different words like swans, happiness, and like that. And so in the verse, there is a word tadvidi. Yeah. In Sanskrit verse, you will get the word tadvidi, tadvidaha. Here is the word tadvidaha. So he's telling the meaning of the word tadvidaha in the this verse. So, so this word tadvidaha, vidaha means to know. And so this word refers to the kshetrajna, the person who knows the body, kshetrajna. So for that, this is the pronoun for that person, kshetrajna, it is written. So for this person, the word is mentioned. Tadvidaha refers to that person. Right? So these are some different points. And so now we'll move ahead. So till now, what has happened? Arjuna has asked 6 questions, and Krishna has answered question third and fourth, and Kshetrajna and Kshetra. Third and fourth question, Krishna has answered. So now in verse 3, recite the verse. क्षेत्रज्ञं च अपि मां विद्धि सर्वक्षेत्रेषु भारत क्षेत्रक्षेत्रज्ञयोर्ज्ञानं यत्यज्ञानं मतं मम. What Krishna is telling, ocean of Bharata, you should understand that I am also the knower in all bodies. And to understand this body and its knower is called knowledge. That is my opinion. So Krishna now in third verse he is telling another knower. In second verse he has told one knower, kshetrajna. One one kshetrajna he has told. and that is living entity. Now he is telling, I am also the knower, I am also the kshetrajna. And to understand his body and its knower is called knowledge. And this is also Arjuna's question. So this is the question number 5. So now first Krishna answered question number 3, and then fourth and fifth also. And so in fourth question, what was the fourth question? Fourth question is Kshetrajna. And now he has told there are two Kshetrajna. One is living entity and another is Krishna himself. And
इसके चाबी नहीं है हमारे पास।
now here Krishna has told that his opinion. So what is the reference? Krishna has given from his opinion, and that is, so now he will give another references also in next verses. So first we'll understand this purport. While discussing the subject of the body and the knower of the body, the soul and the super soul, we shall find 3 different topics of the study. So the knower of the body, what is body? Body is a kshetra. And the knower of the body is kshetrajna. The soul and the super soul. And there are 2 kshetrajna. And who are they? Soul and super soul. We shall find 3 different topics of study: the Lord, the living entity, and matter. In every field of activity, in every body, there are 2 souls: the individual soul and super soul. Because the super soul is the plenary expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna says, I am also the knower. So, actually, super soul is a kshetrajna. But why Krishna is telling? Because super soul is the plenary expansion of Krishna. That's why Krishna has told me, I. I am not the individual knower of the body. I am the super knower. So Krishna is the supernova. I am present in everybody as the Paramatma or super soul. So what is this supernova? So somewhere else Prabhupada gives the analogy. What is this supernova? So Prabhupada tells that see, there is a one landlord, Prabhupada tells. And this landlord has many apartments, and he gives apartments on rent. And so for each apartment, there are individual occupiers who has taken that on the rent from that landlord. And for that particular apartment, the tenant, he also knows about that apartment. And So Prabhupada tells that is like a soul. And landlord, he is like the super soul. This is one of the analogy Prabhupada gives in his lectures. So the landlord is like a we can understand here is he is like Prabhupada has used the word uh, supernova. Supernova means super soul understand what is going on in the body of all living entities. That's why he is a supernova. And for individual kshetra, there are individual knowers. These are souls. Individual knowers are soul, and supernova is super soul. One who studies the subject matter of the field of activity and the knower of the field very minutely in terms of Bhagavad Gita can attain knowledge. And this is the another thing which Krishna has mentioned in this verse, third verse. He has added the question to Arjuna's question number 5. What is jnana? Jnana means Krishna has told there is a kshetra and kshetrajna knows that he is different from kshetra. So that is knowledge according to opinion of Krishna. Lord says, I am the knower of the field of activity in every individual body. The individual may be the knower of his own body, but he is not in knowledge of other bodies. The particular soul has knowledge of his own body, but not of others' body. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is present as the Super Soul in all bodies, before he has mentioned, he is the individual knower, soul. He is the individual knower. And now the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is a Super Soul, he is the super knower in all bodies, knows everything about all bodies. He knows all different bodies of all various species of life. A citizen may know everything about his patch of land, but the king knows not only his palace, but all the properties possessed by the individual citizens. Now, here Prabhupada has given the analogy of and the particular farmer who has a particular piece of land. He knows about that particular patch of land, and king knows uh, about all the land in his country. Similarly, one may be the proprietor of the body individually, but the Supreme Lord is the proprietor of all bodies. And again, Prabhupada made the same conclusion, which previously he has told. The king is the original proprietor of the kingdom, and the citizen is the secondary proprietor, with analogy he has made. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is the supreme proprietor of all bodies, and he is the knower of all bodies. Body consists of the senses. So now what is the kshetra consist of? What is body consist of is senses. The Supreme Lord is Rishikesh, which means the controller of the senses. He is the original controller of the senses, just as the king is the original controller of the activities of the state. So now Prabhupada is giving relationship between what? Kshetra and Kshetrajna. So what is Kshetra means? Body. And body has what it consists of is senses. And Lord is the controller of the senses. So, and then next Prabhupada says, the Lord says that, yes,
Really, the sharing got lost.
got lost.
Yes, bro.
You have to make me co-host again, Rahul. I'm not able to share. Connection got this.
Okay, Prabhu.
ATVD.
Yes, yes. Yes, Prabhu.
Sorry, I think it is not working properly, this device. And we will switch to our, but I'm not able to write. Cancel this. It is wasting lot of time. We came till the point. Body consists of the senses, and the Lord is a Rishikesh. This point we have read. Then, just as the king is the original controller of activities of the state, the citizens are secondary controllers. And what Lord is saying that he is also Kshetrajna as a super soul. This means that he is the supernova. And this point before also Prabhupada has mentioned. And super soul is the supernova, and individual soul is the particular nova, an individual nova. Then there is one verse in the Vedic literature. What is that? Kshetrani hi sharirani bijam chapi subhashuke tani vetti sayogatma tatah kshetrajna uchyate. The body is called kshetra, meaning of this verse, and within it dwells the knower of the body and the supreme Lord, who knows both the body and the knower of the body. Therefore, he is called the knower of all fields. Same concept. The body is a kshetra, and kshetrajna is the knower of the body, knower of the field. The distinction between the field of activities, the knower of activities, and the supreme knower of activities is described as follows. What are the things? The field of activity, and I means body, and the knower of the activity, and who is kshetrajna. And there are two kshetrajna. One is individual, and another is supreme knower. And perfect knowledge of the constitution of the body, the constitution of the individual soul, and the constitution of the super soul is known in terms of Vedic literature as jnana. So this jnana concept is mostly mentioned in Vedic literature, especially in Upanishad. So you might have studied this in Ishopanishad. So Upanishadas, the Jnani people, especially they study these Upanishads. That is the opinion of Krishna. To understand both the soul and super soul as one yet distinct is knowledge. So knowledge means Kshetra and Kshetrajna, they are different. And in Kshetrajna also, there is a soul and super soul. And they are one and different. That is knowledge. One who doesn't understand the field of activity and the knower of activity is not in perfect knowledge. One has to understand the position of the Prakriti, Purusha, and Ishvara. One shouldn't confuse the three in their different capacities. So this should be clearly known to us. One shouldn't confuse the. Now another analogy Prabhupada has given: the painter and the painting and the easel. So the material world is what is the kshetra, the field of activity, is nature, and the enjoyer of nature is the living entity, and above them, both of them, is the supreme controller, personality of Godhead, Krishna. So now in the analogy, it is not clear, but we can understand that painter, painting, and easel. So is a Prakriti, and Krishna is the main painter, and his painting is the Jiva, and his Jivas are the individual actor. Like this, we can understand in this analogy. So, Bhokta Bhogyam Preritaram Chamatva Sarvam Proktam Trividham Brahman Etat. So, this is the quotation from Shvetashvatar Upanishad. And what is the meaning is there are three Brahman conceptions. Prakriti is Brahman as the field of activities, and Jiva is also Brahman. It is individual soul, and is trying to control material nature. And the controller of both of them is also Brahman, who is the factual controller, supreme personality of Godhead. Another thing Prabhupada is telling, in this chapter, it will also be explained that out of the two knowers, one is fallible and other is infallible. it will come ahead in this chapter, that Kshara and Akshara. So Jiva is a Kshara. It can be fallible, and the Lord is infallible. Lord never falls. One is superior and another is subordinate. One who understands the two knowers of the field to be one and the same contradicts the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who states here very clearly, I am also the knower of the field of activity. So again, same point is repeated. One who misunderstands a rope to be serpent is not in knowledge. So Prabhupada is telling that they are different, soul and super soul. And knowing that is a knowledge. There are different kinds of bodies and there are different knowers of the body. Because each individual soul has his individual capacity for lording it over material nature. We saw yesterday. And there are different bodies. And according to the karma, they have different capacities. But the Supreme also is present in them as the controller. The word Cha is significant for it indicates the total number of bodies. And there are, super soul is the controller of all bodies. That's why there is a word Cha in the verse, Sanskrit verse. That is the opinion of Sri Baldev Vidyabhushan. Prabhupada is quoting Baldev Vidyabhushan. Krishna is super soul present in each and every body apart from the individual soul. Same point. Na? Krishna explicitly says here that the super soul is the controller of both the field of activities and the finite enjoyer. So Krishna is controller of both the things, individual soul and Prakriti. So big purport Prabhupada has given. I will just summarize what Prabhupada has told. So first Prabhupada has told that super soul is the supernova. This concept Prabhupada has mentioned. Then this supernova is different and individual knower is different. And no kshetra is field is different. So knowing all these three is knowledge. And in between, Prabhupada has mentioned that knowing individual knower and supernova different, that is also knowledge. This also Prabhupada has mentioned. And then he gives the analogy of the farmer and the king. So farmer is the individual knower of the his own farm and own patch of land. And king is the knower of all the farms in his country. So he is like a super soul. And after that, for understanding these kshetra and two kshetrajna, field and two knowers. Another analogy he gives the painting analogy. And one I told you previously the analogy which he gives in his lecture is that the apartment landlord and tenants. So, and one Vedic quotation Prabhupada has mentioned is one Vedic quotation from the Shvetashvatara Upanishad Prabhupada has mentioned. So it calls Brahman to all the three, but all the three are different. And these are the point mentioned by Prabhupada. Then in the same line, so now one thing here mentioned by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is the Krishna is also a Kshetrajna. but he is the knows completely. So that is the one he knows about all the body and a body of the all living entity. But individual knower is not the complete knower, he tells. And this supernover, Krishna, he knows completely in that apartment. He completely in the field. And the owner knows completely in the field, but the tenants have they also know, but not completely. This is the difference between the knowing of the individual soul and super soul. And this is also mentioned by acharyas. And in this purport, Baldevidya Bhushan has mentioned what is ignorance also. Like Krishna has mentioned the knowledge, but he has given the definition of ignorance also. For giving a definition of ignorance, he just defines knowledge and whatever Krishna has told. So, what is knowledge? Knowing there are two knowers and the field. And so, all these three are different. Knowing this is knowledge, and opposite of this is ignorance. So what is other than this is also we can say by common sense also we can see this, but he has mentioned which Prabhupada has not mentioned in his purport. Some Mayavadi concept he has mentioned, but we will not go into that. Then we'll go ahead. So now next verse is. So this is about verse 3. Verse 4th is Takshetram yat yadrukcha yad vikari yataschayat sachayo yat prabhavascha tat samasena me shrunu. So now in this verse Krishna is telling what he will mention in next verses. So Krishna now mentioned in this verse that here he mentioned that what is the ingredients or constituents of the field. So what the field consists of. The field description of the field of activity means what the field consists of. Sorry, next how the kshetra and field and how it is constituted, what it how it has been formed, and that Krishna will explain, and what changes it undergoes, and what changes, and when it is produced, and who that knower of the field of activity is, and who about kshetrajna, and who is the knower of that activity, and what his influences are. So these topics, influences of the knower. And so these topics Krishna will explain from the verse number 6 to further. And some further up to verse 30. So Krishna explained these topics. So how many topics are there here? So first is a field of activity first, how it is constituted second, and what its changes are when it is produced, and the knower, and what its influences are. And 6 topics Krishna will explain further. And so what Prabhupada says regarding this is, the Lord is describing the field of activities and the knower of the field of activities. in their constitutional position. The field of activities, kshetra, and the knower of the field of activities. So Krishna is describing in great detail. Now just overall picture Krishna gave first. And after that, he mentioned what he will mention. He mentions further in this verse. It's just briefing. So it is a very good style of telling somebody or teaching somebody what he is going to teach further. This is one of the nice style of teaching technique. Then he can tell, teacher can tell. Similar style, Krishna is following that. First, he is briefing what he is going to tell. One has to know how this body is constituted, the materials of which this body is made, under whose control this body is working, how the changes are taking place. So, and these are the topics, and Krishna will explain further where from the changes are coming, what are the causes are, what the reasons are, what the ultimate goal of the individual soul is, and what are the actual form of the individual soul is. Now, this is the just list of topic. And one should also know the distinction between the individual soul and the super soul, their different influences, their potential, etc. One just has to understand this Bhagavad Gita directly from the description given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And all this will be clarified. So Prabhupada is telling that one just has to understand this Bhagavad Gita directly from the description given by the Supreme. And all this will be clarified. So if we hear this from Krishna, then we'll get clarification. But one should be careful not to consider the Supreme Personality of Godhead in every body to be one with individual soul, the Jiva. But Lord is not equal to, one should be careful not to consider the Lord in every body to be one with individual soul. So the soul and the super soul, they are not equal. We should be careful in this regard. Because why we may consider both of them are equal? Because the word used for both of them is kshetratnya. And same word is used for both of them. This is something like equating the potent and impotent. So we can make, there is a probability of making mistake, considering Jiva and Paramatma to be same. But if we do that mistake, then what will be like? Prabhupada is giving analogy that it will be like a potent and impotent. Super soul is a potent and individual soul is a impotent. So Prabhupada is telling there is a difference between both of them. And if you consider them equal, then that is not correct. We are making big mistake like that, Prabhupada. So now the acharyas mentioned these topics briefly in one words. Like first is first topic which this verse mentioned is yat cha, and what the body consists of, and what the body consists of. They just give introductory some words like Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur tells that a body consists of conglomeration of 5 gross element, prana, sense, and other things. Just Krishna has not told, just because they know, what Krishna is going to tell further verses. So he's just briefing what is going to come. After that, he mentioned yadruk, and what quality these elements have. So the desire, hatred, happiness, and the transformation. The third topic is that it takes birth and 6 transformations he mentions. and how what it arises. And it arises from the matter and combination of soul. So he gave what it made up of, and what it is distinguished by differences among various moving and non-moving bodies. And so he has just given the introduction. So what regarding these topics? So now, and in Surrender Unto Me, Bhurijan Prabhu has given where Krishna is mentioning these topics. And like first things Krishna has told in the verse that how the body is constituted and what are its constituent. And so Bhurijan Prabhu is telling Krishna will tell this in verse number 6 and answer to this topic. So just I will go here. The first part is how it is constituted, and so we will get answer to this question in verse number 6. Bhurijan Prabhu is telling. After that, next is what changes the body undergoes, and so that Krishna has mentioned in changes in verse number 7 and 20, verse number 20. And after that, when and where and how the body is produced and how this body has produced. That Krishna has mentioned in verse number 6, 21, and 22. See, 3 verses. And knower of the field regarding Kshetrajna, Krishna has mentioned in 14 to 18. Sorry, 13 to 18 and 23. In these verses, he has mentioned about Kshetrajna and the influences of the knower. Influences of the knower he has mentioned in 14 to 18. In that section, we will get whatever Krishna has briefed this topic, and he is going to tell and in further verses. Now we have covered till verse number 4. So we'll pause here. Things, feels, feels. So this is the about Jnanamay, and also, and this Ramanujacharya he mentions that the person who is living in the Vedic culture and who started following the Vedic culture, according to him, this is because the person who is living in Vedic field, his knowledge is based on what? Whatever principles are given in the Vedas. And so that person, one who is following the Vedic culture, he lives on this stage, like that he has mentioned. And then after that, after this pranamay stage, comes the stage of Vijnanamay, fourth stage. It is called Brahman realization also, Vijnanamay, in which the living entities, mind and the life symptoms are distinguished from the living entity itself. So what happens in this Vijnanamay stage? That earlier stage is Manomay stage. On living entity is identifying with the mind. And the mind and life symptoms are distinguished. Now he is identifying he is different from the mind. And now he is Brahman realized, Vijnanamay. And after that, the stage comes, fifth stage, is the stage of Anandamay. And so Brahman realized, Anand, all blissful. He that in this stage, what happens? The living entity identify with his identity as a soul, as a subordinate to the Lord. That's why this stage is called as Anandamay stage, full of bliss. So these are the 5 stages in realizing the Brahman or the Supreme Personality of God. And in the field of activities, the living entity is considered to be the enjoyer, different from him, is the Anandamay. So these the beginning stages. I missed one statement. To enjoy his transcendental bliss, he expands. So, we have completed 3 minutes. So out of these, the first 3, which Annamay, Pranamay, and Jnanamay, involves the field of activities of the living entities. So these 3 stages. So it requires the kshetra, means body of living entities. And transcendental to all these fields of activities is the Supreme Lord. And he is experienced in the Anandamay stage. Vedanta Sutra also describes the Supreme Lord by saying Anandamayo Abhyasa. Like Krishna has given here the reference of Vedanta Sutra. There it is mentioned that Anandamayo Abhyasa. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is by nature full of joy. To enjoy his transcendental bliss, he expands into Vijnanamaya, Pranamaya, Jnanamaya, Annamaya. So Krishna has expanded, Lord has expanded so that he can be realized through these 5 stages. These stages are also the expansion of Lord. He has expanded. He expands. That means that if the living entity decides to enjoy endowing himself with the Anandamay, then he becomes perfect. This is the real picture of the Lord. So, as far as possible, if the living entity is doubting and everything he has towards the Lord, then he can be on the Anandamay stage. This is the real picture of the Supreme Lord, and as a he's completely composed of supreme bliss, knower of the field, the living entity as the subordinate knower and the nature of the field of activities. And living entity's position is a subordinate to the Lord. One has to search for this truth in the Vedanta Sutra or Brahma Sutra. So this is the ultimate realization, and that can be searched in the Vedanta Sutra and Brahma Sutra. It is mentioned here that the codes of Brahma Sutra are very nicely arranged according to cause and effect. Some of the sutras or aphorism are. So Krishna has told in the verse regarding where it is mentioned in great detail in Brahma Sutra. So Prabhupada is giving some quotations from Brahma Sutra, which Acharya has given. Same Prabhupada is repeating. Na Viyad Ashrute, Natma Shrute, and Paratu Tach Shrute. These 3 quotation Prabhupada quotes from Acharya. The first aphorism and indicate the field of activity. Na Viyat Ashrute. So what it indicates is the field of activity. It mentions the kshetra body in great detail. The second is Natma Shrute. So it mentions in great detail the living entity. And third is Paratu Tat Shrute. So it mentioned in great detail about Lord. Samam Bonum. So this is the Prabhupada purport and some points from Vives Acharya. That link which I told, so that is given by Acharyas only. And the remaining things Prabhupada has covered. So we'll move ahead. Now, Krishna has mentioned that where it is mentioned in great detail. Now, Krishna starts his brief description from verse number 6. He'll just recite Mahabhutanya ahankaro buddhir avyaktam evacha indriyani dashayakam cha panchendriya gochara इच्छाद्वेष सुखम दुःखम संगातश्चेतना धृतिः एतत् क्षेत्रं समासेन सविकारम् उदाहृतम्. So now Krishna is telling what now he started telling the constituents of what the field and what the field is constituted. And he has mentioned in verse 4 what he will mention further. And also now in this verse, Krishna is telling the transformation. So now first he mentioned the constituents. The field consists of 5 great elements: false ego, intelligence, the unmanifested, and pradhana, the 10 senses and the mind, the 5 sense objects: desire, hatred, happiness, distress, aggregate, life symptom, conviction. All these are considered in a summary to be the field of activities and its interaction. You are not able to see the screen. Screen is visible. Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. I got message that screen is not visible. Sorry. That was previous message. Now I got message that please summarize the previous verse. Okay. So now in previous 5th verse, so Krishna has mentioned that Krishna has given the references. And in verse 4, Krishna has mentioned that he will speak briefly. And so where it is mentioned in with great elaboration, so Krishna mentioned the references where it is mentioned. The sages has mentioned in different books, and also in the Vedanta Sutra. 2 references Krishna has given. The words of the sages and Vedanta Sutra. So then Prabhupada and Acharya, they have mentioned that which sages, particularly Vyasdev and his father, they have mentioned the concept of Kshetra, Kshetrajna, Prakriti in great detail. This is Jnana section. And also, then who has mentioned in Vedanta Sutra, what is mentioned? In Vedanta Sutras, there is one Taittiriya Upanishad. So Vedanta Sutra is different, but particularly in Upanishad, there is Taittiriya Upanishad. And in Taittiriya Upanishad, there is a concept of 5 koshas, 5 levels. So by these 5 levels, one can realize the Supreme Lord. And in these 5 koshas, there is a mention of the living entity and the knower in great detail. Just Prabhupada has how it is mentioned. That is not given, but Prabhupada has mentioned just references. And then in Vedanta Sutra, which all sutras are there, three sutras. And so these mainly these three references Prabhupada has given in the his purport. One is from the sages like Vyasa and Parashar, and second is from Taittiriya Upanishad regarding this Panchakosha, and after that this Brahma Sutras. So these three references Prabhupada has given in the purport. Like that, we can summarize the previous verse, fifth verse. And after that, now sixth and seventh verse, Krishna is speaking the sixth verse is speaking the constituents of the field and what the field made up of. And after that, seventh verse, it is mentioned that um, what are the transformation and vikar and are going to happening in the field, like that Krishna has mentioned. Now Prabhupada is giving purport that from all the authoritative statements of the great sages, the Vedic hymns and the aphorism of Vedanta Sutra, the components of this world can be understood as follows. Prabhupada is telling that what is the conclusion Krishna has given in brief from the Vedanta Sutra and other scriptures, Vedic hymns. So, what is the conclusion? The first, there are five Pancha Mahabhutas, five great elements, which are they? Earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Then, now these are the constituents of field. First constituent is five great elements, Pancha Mahabhut. Then after that is ego, ahankar, intelligence, buddhi, and unmanifested stage of the three modes of nature, that is called pradhana. These are, then there are five senses for acquiring knowledge, jnanendriya, which we call the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. These are five. Then five working senses: voice, legs, hand, anus, and genitals. Then above the senses, there is the mind, which is then, which is within and which can be called the sense within. Within means we cannot see. That's why it is called within. And also it is called sense within. Therefore, including the mind, there are 11 senses altogether. Then there are the five objects of the senses: smell, taste, form, touch, and sound. So now what will be the aggregate? 24. And how the aggregate comes to 24? First is five great elements, five. Then ego, intelligence, and pradhana, 3. 5 and 3, 8. Then there are five knowledge acquiring and five working, 10. And 18, and a total 18. Then there are five sense of, then there is mind, sorry. After 18, there is mind, 19. And after that, there are five sense objects, 19 and 5, 24. And now the aggregate came to 24 elements, is called the field of activity. If one makes an analytical study of these 24 subjects, then he can very well understand the field of activity. So now this field of activity or kshetra or body is made up of these 24 elements. And if somebody understand this very analytically, then understand the body or the field of activity. Then there are desire, hatred, happiness, and distress, which are interactions, a representation of the five great elements in the gross body. Then these are the desire, hatred, happiness, and distress. These are the which are interactions of these elements. A representation of the five great elements in the body. The living symptoms represented by consciousness and conviction are the manifestation of the subtle body, mind, ego, and intelligence. So these are different interactions within subtle and gross body. The five great elements are a gross presentation of the false ego, which in turn represents the primal stage of false ego, technically called materialistic conception or tamas buddhi, intelligence in ignorance. So these five great elements, so they are a representation of the false ego or tamas buddhi. This further represents the unmanifested stage of three modes of material nature. And the unmanifested modes of material nature are called pradhan. They are the steps in the creation, which is mentioned in Bhagavatam detail. So it has the term pradhana. One who desires to know the 24 elements in detail along with the interaction. Chat message came that five elements, five sense objects, 5 + 5 jnanendriyas and karmendriyas. Mind, intelligence, false ego. One missing 24th is pradhana Mataji, which is mentioned here. What is pradhana? Is the unmanifested stage of three modes of material nature. So that is 24th missing in your message. So one who desires to know the 24 elements in detail along with their interaction should study the philosophy in more detail. In Bhagavad Gita, a summary only is given. So what Prabhupada is mentioning that here only names are given in Bhagavad Gita. As Krishna before also he has mentioned, before mentioning this, I am just mentioning in brief. And here just he has mentioned the name. So if somebody wants to study more detail, then he has to study Vedas and Upanishads. After that, Prabhupada is telling the body is the representation of all these factors, and there are changes of the body. So now first part Prabhupada has completed. What are the constituents of the body? Now Prabhupada is mentioning, now verse 6 is, now here verse 6 and 7 are combined. Now till this point verse 6 is explained. Now 7th verse Prabhupada is writing. And what is there in 7th verse? The vikaras or transformation of the body. These are mentioned in the 7th verse. And what are the transformation? They are total 6 in number. And this you have studied before also. The body is born and janma, and body takes birth, it grows, and then it stays, and it stays for some time. Now, how many are done? 3 are done. Then it produces byproduct, 4th. Then 5th is it decays and start dwindling or decays. And at the 6th stage, it vanishes, mrityu. And so therefore, the field is a non-permanent material thing. And so field is undergoing constant transformation. And so that's why field is a non-permanent thing. However, the kshetrajna, the knower of the field, its proprietor is different and he is not changing, and that we can understand. The proprietor is not changing, but the field is changing. Like this. Krishna has now answered which question? That constituents of the body and a kshetra and the transformation of the body. Two things Krishna has mentioned in these two verses. And uh, now Krishna continues, and he mentioned the next part and how to gain that knowledge and what process we have to follow and what things somebody has to follow in order to cultivate knowledge. So Krishna has mentioned the knowledge. And can somebody repeat what is the definition of knowledge given by Krishna? What is the knowledge?
Can I answer, Prabhuji?
Yes, please.
Knowing about the self, that is soul. Kshetra, Kshetragya, three things are there, na? That is knowledge.
So, what three things? Which three things?
Soul, subtle body, and the gross body. Knowing about them is knowledge.
So, subtle body and gross body, Krishna has kept in one thing. Correct. So, that is body and soul. Two things you told. And what is third thing? Can somebody else try?
Super soul, Prabhuji.
Super. And knowing these three things is the knowledge and that Krishna has told. But not everybody is in knowledge. Everybody doesn't know this. So if somebody wants to know all these three things are different, then what process he should follow, a person. So everybody will not agree that soul, super soul, and body, these three things are different. And so those who have faith or those who have that knowledge, they will agree. And then in order to come to conclusion that these three things are different, then what is the process if somebody follows, then he can come to that stage. And that Krishna has given from this verse number 8 to 12. And so he has given 20 atoms. And by following these 20 atoms, one will definitely will be becoming on this platform of knowledge that body, soul, and super soul. Three of them are different. So we'll recite these verses. Right? Amanitvam adambitvam ahimsam kshantir arjavam acharya upasanam shaucham स्थैर्यम् आत्मा विनिग्रहः इन्द्रियार्थेषु वैराग्यम् अनङ्कार एव च जन्म मृत्यु जरा व्याधि दुःख दोषानुदर्शनम् आसक्तिर् अनभिस्वङ्गः पुत्रदाराग्रहादिषु नित्यं च समचित्तत्वम् इष्ठानिष्ठोपपत्तिषु मयि चानन्ययोगेन भक्तिरव्यभिचारिणी विविक्तदेशसेवित्वम् अरतिर्जन संसदि आध्यात्मज्ञाननित्यत्वम् तत्त्वज्ञानार्थदर्शनम् एतेज ज्ञानम् इति प्रोक्तम् अज्ञानम् यद् अतोऽन्यथा. So now I will give you this list of 20 things Krishna has mentioned. And all these, what Krishna has declared to be knowledge. And besides this, whatever there may be is ignorance. Like translation. So now what are the 20 things Krishna has mentioned? So I have made one chart that Gauranga Priya Prabhu, he has made actually this chart. I have taken from his notes. So, and some things I have added. He has made very brief chart. So, there's 20 things which Krishna has mentioned here. Is that first he mentioned humility, and Sanskrit word also have given. Sanskrit word is amanitvam. And here definition, I have given whatever Prabhupada has mentioned, that I have written in second column. So we'll just read first column. We'll read, and humility is amanitvam. Krishna has mentioned. Then adambitvam is the pridelessness. Right? Then ahimsa is non-violence. Shanti is tolerance. Arjavam simplicity. And accepting a spiritual master, acharya, upasanam, cleanliness, steadiness, stairyam, self-control, atma vinigraha, and renunciation of sense objects, indriyartheshu vairagyam. So absence of false ego, anahankaraha, perception of evils of birth, death, disease, old age, that Krishna has mentioned, Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi, Dukkha Doshanu Darshanam. Then a detachment, Asakti, no entanglement with wife, children, etc. Ana Bhisvangha Putradara Grahadishu, even mindedness, Sama Chittatvam. Then unalloyed devotional service, Ananya Bhakti, Maicha Ananya Yogena, Bhakti Avyabhicharini. These are Sanskrit words. Aspiring to live in a solitary place, Vivikta Desha Sevitvam. Then a detachment from general masses, Aratihi Janasamsiddhi. So these are 18 things. So our acharyas has mentioned, so devotees, they can practice these 18 things. And the remaining two things, they are especially meant for jnanis. Those who want to practice especially the jnana path, jnana marga. So devotees, they can avoid these 19 and 28 things that we will just study, and as it is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. So accepting the importance of self-realization. Adhyatma jnana nityatvam, like this jnana nityatvam. And philosophical research for the absolute truth. Tattva jnana artha darshanam. So these two are especially for jnanis. Now I will read the purport and we'll see what is mentioned by Prabhupada regarding these things. So now in the beginning, Prabhupada just gives the introduction. In that he mentioned that now these are the processes of interaction. We'll just this process of knowledge is sometimes misunderstood by less intelligent men as being the interactions of the field of activity. So some people, they misunderstand. And so what I told before beginning is this is the process and to come to that knowledge and to understand the soul, super soul, and body are different. But some people, they misunderstand and they see these consider these 20 at some as the interaction of the field of activity. But it is not the interaction of the field of activity, but it is the process to come to knowledge. First, Prabhupada is clarifying. But actually, this is the real process of knowledge. If one accepts this process, then the possibility of approaching the absolute truth exists. This is not the interaction of the 24 elements. Prabhupada is again making the same point. This is actually the means to get out of the entanglement of those elements. This is not the interaction, but Prabhupada, what is telling, we can get out by the influence of or the entanglements of those 24 elements. The embodied soul is entrapped by the body. which is casing made of the 24 elements. And the process of knowledge, as described here, is the means to get out of it. So the soul is entrapped by the body, and this body is made up of 24 elements. And what this process makes is we are different from the bodies, and we can realize by following these 20 elements. Of all the description of the process of knowledge, the most important point is described in the first line of the 11th verse. So among all these 20 atoms, Prabhupada is mentioning that Maicha Ananya Yogena Bhaktir a Vyabhicharini, and the process of knowledge terminates in unalloyed devotional service to the Lord. So if one doesn't approach or is not able to approach the transcendental service of the Lord, then the other 19 atoms are of no particular value. And so if one is not practicing the Bhakti Yoga or Mai Chananya Yogena Bhakti Vicharini, then there is no value to remaining 19 atom. So in previous also I mentioned one sentence by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. It tells that if there is not any trace of devotional service in jnana and karma, then they cannot achieve the result of jnana and karma, the processes. So same point Prabhupada has repeated here. So if that practice of bhakti is not there, then there is no value to remaining atom, remaining 19 atom. So also he quotes from fifth canto that Yasyasti bhakti bhagavati akinchana sarve gunastatra samasate sura. So all good qualities will develop if one is practicing devotional service or bhakti. The principle of accepting a spiritual master. Then how one should practice bhakti? By accepting a spiritual master. As mentioned in the 8th verse of this section, is essential. Even for one who takes to devotional service, it is most important. Transcendental life begins when one accepts a bona fide spiritual master. For one may think that this is section for jnani, and for jnanis it is important, and for devotees it is not important to have a spiritual master. One can come to such a conclusion. So Prabhupada is clarifying before that only that in devotional service also a spiritual master is required. And the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna clearly stated, he states here that this process of knowledge is the actual path. And this is the actual path to where to come to conclusion that body, soul and super soul, they are different. Anything speculated beyond this is nonsense. So anything apart from this is nonsense. So Prabhupada has mentioned, so how we can understand apart from this, like here it is mentioned that first is humility. And humility is what? Amanitvam, we saw in the verse. And Amanitvam, the Sanskrit word for humility is Amanitvam. And then what is the opposite of humility? That arrogance. That is ignorance. So whatever is mentioned here, like humility is mentioned, and then amanitvam, adhambitvam, and these things are mentioned. So opposite of these 20 elements is ignorance or nonsense. So like that is mentioned. And then this is the introduction about the process of knowledge Prabhupada has given. Now Prabhupada speaks one line, two lines about all these 20 elements. So that we will cover in our next discussion. So for now, time is over. So we will stop here, 7:40. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Hare
Uh,
Krishna.
Thank you very much. Namaste, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Actually, this section is